Maya froze as a faint groan cut through the silence of the forest. Her heart raced as she turned toward the sound, clutching the firewood she had been gathering. Pushing aside branches, she spotted a man slumped at the base of a tree, his expensive jacket torn and blood staining his leg. "Mister?" she whispered, kneeling beside him. His eyes fluttered open, pain etched across his face. "Help!" he murmured before collapsing again. Without hesitation, Maya hooked her arms under his and began dragging him toward their cabin. Every step strained her small frame, but she didn't stop. When they reached the cabin, her mother, Elena, looked up weakly from her bed. "Who is that?" Elena asked hoarsely. "I don't know," Maya said, breathless. "But I couldn't leave him." Using herbs and cloth scraps, Maya cleaned his wound and bandaged it tightly. As the man lay unconscious by the fire, Maya wondered who he was, and whether saving him would change their lives forever. The man's fever spiked that night. Maya stayed by his side, pressing a damp cloth to his forehead and feeding him sips of water when he stirred. His wounds were severe, but her determination never wavered. She had seen her mother fight illness for weeks. She knew how to care for someone clinging to life. By morning, the man's breathing steadied, and he opened his eyes again. This time they were clearer, searching the room until they landed on Maya. "Where am I?" he croaked, his voice weak. "In the forest," Maya replied simply. "You were hurt. I brought you here." He stared at her, disbelief flickering in his gaze. "You saved me?" Maya nodded, avoiding his eyes. "You'd have died out there." The man tried to sit up, wincing as pain shot through his leg. "My name is Daniel Harper," he said finally. "I was hiking, got lost." His voice trailed off as he took in their humble surroundings. The cracked walls, the threadbare blankets, the faint scent of herbs hanging over the fire. "And you are?" he asked softly. "I'm Maya," she said. "That's my mother, Elena. She's sick." Daniel glanced at Elena, who lay quietly on her makeshift bed, watching them with tired eyes. Guilt washed over him. These two had so little, yet they had risked everything to save a stranger. "I need to repay you," Daniel said firmly, though his voice was still weak. "When I'm better, I'll make sure you're taken care of." Maya shook her head. "We didn't do it for repayment. We just couldn't let you die." Her words struck him deeply. Here was a girl who had nothing, yet gave everything without expecting a thing in return. Over the next few days, Daniel regained some strength, thanks to Maya's relentless care. But as Elena grew weaker, Maya realized their situation was becoming dire. They needed medicine, something only the city could provide. "I'll go," Maya declared one evening, her voice steady despite the fear tightening her chest. "No," Daniel protested. "It's too dangerous." "It's the only way," she insisted. "If I don't, Mom won't make it." With no other options, Daniel reluctantly agreed to help her prepare for the journey. Little did either of them know, this decision would set off a chain of events neither could have predicted. The night before Maya's trip to the city, Daniel shared stories of his life, his work as a millionaire businessman, his travels, and the family he rarely saw because of his demanding career. Maya listened quietly, her wide eyes reflecting both wonder and sadness. "You must miss them," she said softly. Daniel hesitated, then nodded. "I do, but I've learned that money doesn't fix everything. Sometimes, it even makes you forget what matters most." He glanced at Elena, who slept fitfully nearby, and then at Maya. "You've reminded me of that." Maya didn't respond. She wasn't used to praise, especially not from someone like Daniel. To her, caring for others was simply what you did when there was no one else to turn to. Early the next morning, Maya set out with a small bag slung over her shoulder. Daniel had given her directions to the nearest town and enough coins to buy medicine, though she felt uneasy accepting them. The forest seemed darker without Daniel's presence beside her, but she pressed on, repeating her mother's name under her breath to keep herself focused. When she finally reached the city, it overwhelmed her. Crowds of people, carts rattling along cobblestone streets, and towering buildings that blocked out the sky. She clutched the coins tightly in her hand as she navigated toward the market. At a stall selling medicinal herbs, Maya carefully selected what she needed, counting each coin twice to ensure she had enough. As she turned to leave, a well-dressed woman stopped her. "Excuse me, child," the woman said kindly. "Are those for someone sick?" Maya nodded, clutching the bag closer. "My mother." The woman studied her face, noting the dirt smudges and weary eyes. "You're very brave to come all this way alone. Where are you from?" "The forest," Maya replied simply. Impressed by her courage, the woman introduced herself as Mrs. Langley, a philanthropist known for helping struggling families. She offered to escort Maya back to the edge of the city, ensuring she wouldn't get lost or harassed along the way. During their walk, Maya spoke about her life, the cabin, her mother's illness, and how she'd saved Daniel. Mrs. Langley listened intently, her expression softening with each word. By the time they parted ways, she promised to send help to the cabin within days. Unbeknownst to Maya, Mrs. Langley was also connected to Daniel's world. When she returned home, she shared the story of the brave girl from the forest with influential friends, including members of Daniel's business circle. Word spread quickly, painting Maya as a symbol of resilience and compassion. Maya returned to the cabin just as the sun dipped below the horizon, her bag heavy with medicine and her heart lighter knowing she could help her mother. But when she arrived, she found an unexpected sight. Two men in suits standing near Daniel, who was leaning on a makeshift cane. "Maya!" Daniel called out, relief washing over his face. "You're back." The men introduced themselves as associates of Daniel's company. They had tracked him down after days of frantic searching, following leads from villagers who'd seen Maya in the city. "We came as soon as we heard," one of them said, glancing at the humble cabin. "Mr. Harper, you've been gone for nearly 2 weeks. The board has been in chaos without you." Daniel waved off their concerns. "My health isn't the issue here. These people saved my life. I won't leave until I've repaid them." The men exchanged uneasy glances but didn't argue further. Instead, they helped carry supplies inside and assisted Elena, whose condition began improving thanks to the medicine Maya brought. Over dinner that night, a modest meal of boiled potatoes and wild mushrooms, Daniel shared more about his plans. "I want to take you and your mother to the city," he told Maya earnestly. "You deserve better than this. Proper care, education, a chance at a real future." Maya hesitated. The idea of leaving the forest, the only home she'd ever known, felt terrifying. Yet, deep down, she knew staying meant continuing a cycle of struggle and survival. For her mother's sake, she couldn't refuse. The next morning, Daniel arranged for a carriage to transport them all to the city. As they left the cabin behind, Maya glanced back one last time, committing every detail to memory. When they arrived in the bustling metropolis, Maya felt like she'd stepped into another world. Skyscrapers loomed overhead, carriages rattled through wide streets, and people hurried past in elegant clothes. Daniel settled them into a comfortable apartment, ensuring Elena received top-notch medical care while enrolling Maya in a prestigious school. At first, Maya struggled to adapt. The other students whispered about her plain dresses and quiet demeanor, unsure what to make of the girl who had come from nothing. But Daniel encouraged her, reminding her of her strength and resilience. "You've already proven you can handle anything," he told her one evening. "This is just another challenge." Slowly, Maya began to find her place. Her natural intelligence and determination earned her respect among teachers and peers alike. Meanwhile, stories of her bravery continued to spread, inspiring those around her, including Daniel, who started reevaluating his priorities and reconnecting with his own family as weeks turned into months. Maya's life transformed in ways she never imagined. With Daniel's support, she thrived in school, excelling in subjects she'd never even heard of before: mathematics, literature, and science. Her teachers marveled at her sharp mind and unrelenting curiosity, often remarking that she was destined for greatness. Elena, too, began to recover fully under the care of skilled doctors. For the first time in years, She could walk without assistance and spend hours teaching Maya simple recipes or sewing new clothes for her. The bond between mother and daughter grew stronger than ever, even as their world expanded beyond the forest they once called home. Meanwhile, Daniel found himself profoundly changed by Maya's presence. Watching her navigate challenges with grace and determination inspired him to reconnect with his estranged children and focus on what truly mattered: family. He often told Maya how much she reminded him of his late wife, whose kindness and resilience had shaped his early years. One day, during a formal gala hosted by Daniel's company, Maya accompanied him as his guest. Dressed in a borrowed gown, she felt out of place among the glittering crowd but held her head high. When Daniel introduced her to his colleagues and friends, he didn't hesitate to share her story: the girl from the forest who risked everything to save a stranger. The room fell silent as people listened, moved by her courage and humility. By the end of the night, several influential figures approached Daniel, eager to help provide opportunities for Maya. Scholarships were offered, mentorships arranged, and doors opened that would have otherwise remained shut. But it wasn't just about material gains. Maya's selflessness sparked a ripple effect, inspiring those around her to give back to their communities. Even Mrs. Langley, who had played a pivotal role in spreading Maya's story, launched a foundation dedicated to helping families living in remote areas gain access to education and healthcare. Through it all, Maya remained humble, always remembering where she came from. She often visited the forest cabin with Daniel, bringing supplies and sharing stories of her new life. Each trip reminded her of the journey she'd taken, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. Years passed, and Maya grew into a confident young woman, her future brighter than she could have ever dreamed. She graduated at the top of her class, earning a scholarship to study medicine, a field she chose to honor her mother's struggles and repay the kindness shown to her. Daniel became more than just a benefactor. He became family. He legally adopted Maya, giving her a permanent place in his life and ensuring she would never feel alone again. Together, they rebuilt not only their own lives but also strengthened the bond between Daniel and his estranged children, who admired Maya's resilience and warmth. One crisp autumn morning, Maya stood on a hill overlooking the forest where it all began. The cabin was still there, weathered but standing, surrounded by golden trees and the soft hum of nature. Beside her, Daniel smiled as he watched her take it all in. "You've come so far," he said softly. "I'm proud of you." Maya nodded, her eyes glistening with tears. "It's funny, I didn't think saving you that day would change anything. I just wanted to do what was right." "And because of that," Daniel replied, placing a hand on her shoulder, "you've changed everything, for yourself, for your mother, and for so many others." As the wind rustled through the leaves, Maya realized how much one act of courage could ripple outward, creating miracles in ways she never expected. She thought about the patients she would soon treat, the lives she would touch, and the legacy of kindness she hoped to leave behind. The forest had been her home, her refuge, and her greatest teacher. But now, standing on the edge of a new chapter, she knew her journey was far from over. With a final glance at the cabin, Maya turned and walked back toward the city, ready to embrace the endless possibilities ahead.